The natural geography of Egypt actually creates boundaries, physical boundaries around the land. But interestingly, the geography of Egypt also began to shape people's internal bearings, how they think, process, saw the world, worldviews, if you will. To say it differently, the geography influenced not only where they lived, but how they thought, the boundaries and the worldviews. From the natural boundaries perspective, this geography creates walls of protection from outside invaders and enemies and armies. To the north of the Nile River, it branches out into multiple distributaries. These distributaries, little rivers, if you will, fan out into the Mediterranean Sea. You can see it on a map. The top looks like a triangle. That area is called the delta. The delta gets its name because the Greek letter, delta, looks like a triangle. In ancient times, there was like 7 different distributaries that fanned out into the Mediterranean Sea. What's the point? If you're an invader coming from the Mediterranean Sea in a big ship, you're going to have a hard time getting up these little distributaries to attack Egypt. Immediately to the east and the west of the Nile River Valley, there's deserts that are impassable for large armies, or at least without some effort. On the western banks of the Nile, it quickly transcends from lush to arid. This western desert is actually the eastern part of the Sahara Desert. It forms a border between Egypt and the Libyans and others. On the east side of the Nile River Valley, you've got another desert, the Arabian Desert. It too is going to be a formidable force, a boundary, a protection, a natural wall from the outside world. And if that wasn't enough, to the north and the east even more, there's another desert. We call it the Sinai Peninsula. It's going to extend all the way to the Red Sea. Additional sizable force, a field, a wall that makes it hard for invading armies to come. Now there were no doubt trading routes going through that area, but along the north, on the biggest route, it's 137 miles from Egypt up into Canaan, archaeologists have found a series of military forces. That road, it was called the Way of Horus, or the Way of the Sea. Exodus 13:17 calls it the way through the Philistine country. In short, Egypt was surrounded by deserts on the east and the west. If you remember when Israel is transgressing and they're moving through, Exodus 13:17 actually says this: when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though it was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. To the south was also obstructed. Down in the south, in Upper Egypt, the river bends and turns. There's rocks, there's boulders. They actually create rapids and waterfalls. These series of boulders and turns and bends and waterfalls, they're called cataracts. There's 6 of them. They were impassable. In fact, if you're coming through down the river on a boat, it's impossible to get past these. In ancient times, there's stories. They literally took the boat out of the water, carried it around the cataract, back in the water, and kept sailing. What's the point? The geography of Egypt forms a natural barrier, protecting it from the outside world. At the same time, the river serves almost as an incubator, creating a sustainable economy for Egypt to become a powerhouse. But geography didn't just shape the natural borders. Geography shaped the way people thought, the way people saw the world. The land, it's full, it's rich. The floodplains are black with soil. That black land, they actually called Kemet. And Kemet was more than just black soil. It was life. It was resurrection. This Kemet existed only in Egypt and only along the river. This land, this black land, Kemet, quickly as you went to the east and the west, became arid, became infertile. That was the red land. The Egyptians called it Deshret. The distinction was clear. Worldviews are being formed. The black land, Kemet, that's Ma'at. M-A-A-T. It's justice, it's order, it's harmony. The world is as it is to be, but beyond the banks is Deshret, the red land, Isfet, the Egyptians call it. And that is chaos and evil. The distinction is stark. You can see it still today. You can literally stand with 1 foot in the red land, 1 foot in the black land. Put one hand in the black soil, one hand in the red dirt. It's life, it's death, it's order, it's chaos. The black land, it's everything as it's meant to be. But the red land, it's inhospitable, it's dangerous, it's wild. It's the place of marauding nomads and chaos. The picture was clear. Egypt is a place of order. The rest of the world is in chaos. The geography of Egypt shaped not just borders, but what was order and chaos. But more than that, it began to shape their view of the divine, divinity, the gods. Pharaoh was God's representative on earth. He was like an extension, the hand of God in the present. At times, the Pharaoh was God himself in the flesh, they would say. And much of what Pharaoh's job was to do was to maintain order. Not just demonstrate dominance over the people, but the Pharaoh demonstrated dominance over the land. It was the Pharaoh's connection with God, or the God's pleasure with Pharaoh, that Pharaoh maintained ma'at. He maintained order and harmony in lands. And when the floods came and the crops grew, it was just validation. The gods are with Pharaoh. But ultimately, you strip that away, the gods are behind it all. And there were gods in Egypt for everything. The very Nile River was a manifestation of a whole bunch of gods. Gods that were responsible for causing the waters to flood. When the river flooded, the gods were pleased with us. When the waters didn't flood, the gods must be angry. So what do? You got to keep the gods happy. There was Hapi, and he was responsible for parts of the flooding, but then you got Khnum and Uket and Setis, and they're also guardians of the Cataracts, guardians that bring the bubbling of the floods, the ones that bring the silt and fertility. You've got gods like Sobek, who looks like a half man, half crocodile, but he controls the waters. He brings fertility to the soil. He protects you from the woes and the dangers of the Nile. You're probably thinking, they all do the same thing. I know, and that's Egypt. But they have gods for everything. The point, geography influenced the worldview about the gods, but the geography actually influenced what they thought about the afterlife. How do you get around in Egypt? On a boat, on the river. The river is the means of daily transportation. You travel in a boat, and traveling in a boat became an image for what the afterlife was like. You can see it all over temples, even to this day. The sun god Ra was believed in Greek mythology to travel across the sky during the day, every day on his solar bark, his boat. And at night, he would go through the underworld, and the cycle of light and darkness would happen. And they believed that that was a picture of the afterlife for people, especially the kings, that when they died, they would get in a boat and they would sail across and down into the underworld. It's a lot more complex than that, but you get the idea. And how are they going to travel into the afterlife? In a boat, of course. Interestingly, in these ancient burial sites, some 5,000 years old, you know what they found? Buried not far from the king? A boat. One of these places at the pyramid site of Giza, they found a boat full, intact, made of wood, and it's almost 5,000 years old. Why? Because geography is shaping their physical world. It's shaping their boundaries, but it's shaping their hearts. It's shaping their minds. It's shaping their views of the gods and their afterlife. The gods in ancient Egypt, they were everywhere. They did everything. In fact, some estimate that the ancient Egyptians looked to, paid homage to, or worshipped some 2,000 gods, goddesses, deities. Why is that important? Because the Hebrews lived in Egypt for some 430 years. And during that time, they began to think. They began to live. Many of them began to worship like the Egyptians. Joshua 24 actually refers to the Hebrews when they were in Egypt and says they were worshiping Egyptian gods. The prophet Ezekiel in chapter 20 will later say that God spoke to the Hebrews and says, get rid of your idols from Egypt. Ezekiel laments, many of them didn't, that while the Hebrews were in Egypt, they're worshiping the Egyptian gods, and when they left Egypt, some of them still had them in their back pocket. And that's important, because one of the very first words God speaks to Israel in the desert when they left Egypt, the land of all these gods, was this in Exodus 20. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, the land of slavery. And then you shall have no other God. You shall make no image for yourself. You shall not form an image into anything in heaven below or earth beneath or waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Gods were everywhere, and they looked to gods for everything. And God is trying to reshape their minds in the wilderness. He says, no. There's one God, and I am He. Ultimately, Yahweh was doing this. Yahweh, the one true God, saw fit to take them into a new land with new boundaries. How did He do so? He took them into a new place, a new geography. The geography of the wilderness. And in the wilderness, that geography was to reshape how they think and reshape how they live and reshape how they depend on the one true God. God's plan in the wilderness, that in that new geography, they'd learn how to trust Him. They'd learn how to depend on Him. They'd learn how to worship Him. They'd learn how to walk with Him. They'd learn how to follow Him. And when their worldview was reshaped to see the one true God, Yahweh, they would become truly His people, entering into a covenant with Him, and ultimately, as Exodus 19 says, they would begin to demonstrate and fulfill God's purpose through them in the earth. They would be His priest, a kingdom of priests, representing God to the world. And all of that takes place in a specific geography. Geography shapes land, it shapes boundaries, it shapes hearts. It was true then, and it's true today.